everyone at CJ. Hopefully everyone's having a fantastic Friday afternoon so far. It is Friday, April the 22nd. I want to thank you for joining our live stream today. We have a returning guest, very special guest that many of you are very familiar with. I've been following her work for quite some time now and really enjoy her commentary, her interviews, all the great work that she does as an independent journalist. Today's guest is Taylor Hudak. And you can find Taylor's primary information and follow her work over on her Telegram channel, which is Taylor Hudak News. I did put the link in the description, so you shouldn't have any problem. I encourage you to jump over, join her Telegram channel to keep up with all the work that she does. Also, she's very involved with acTVism Munich on their YouTube channel. She's done several different interviews there, and she's also a contributor to The Last American Vagabond. So with that being said, I want to welcome Taylor Hudak to our live stream. So Taylor, welcome back. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad you're here, and very the most interesting times that we're currently navigating through, Taylor. A multitude of different things that are happening, not only in regards to politics but geopolitics. I know that you've been very heavily involved with Julian Assange and his efforts to get him free. And I know we've had some recent news, and I think that you wanted to share that with our listeners. So I'm going to give you the opportunity and the floor to do that. So please go ahead.
Yeah, so unfortunately, I have not such great news to share about Julian Assange's case. And again, this is a very complex case, and it's gotten to the point where it's become very technical, and there's a lot of legal terminology that's being used. But just to sort of briefly summarize, what just recently happened. There was a court hearing that took place on Wednesday, April 20th. Assange was in attendance. And basically during this court hearing, it was more so of a formality or a technicality where the judge at the magistrate's level issued the order of extradition, and it is now going to be referred to the UK Home Secretary Priti Patel to either approve or reject this extradition order. So Assange, unfortunately, is one step closer to facing extradition to the United States. To put this into a little bit better of a context here, there were a series of evidentiary extradition hearings which took place throughout 2020, first beginning in February and then resuming in September and into the very beginning of October. This is 2020. Then January 4th, 2021, the district judge blocked the extradition request, and she ruled in favor of the defense. She found that it would be oppressive to extradite Assange under Section 91 of the UK Extradition Act of 2003. Of course, we expected that the US would appeal that ruling. They did, and a 2-day appeal hearing was held in October 2021. And then on December 10th, 2021, which is ironically on Human Rights Day, this panel of 3, high court judges overturned the lower court's decision and granted the extradition. So then Assange's legal team was still able to appeal once again to the UK Supreme Court. They applied for appeal, and that appeal was denied. So that is why the case was then sent back to the magistrate's court on Wednesday. And I know this can be a little bit confusing, but it's been a legal back and forth, and I can't imagine how tormenting that must be for the people who are emotionally invested in this case, Assange's friends and family and those who know him well. So this man has just really been put through so much, and he's been suffering through this entire time, not only psychologically facing potential extradition to the United States in a 175 prison sentence, but he's also been in Belmarsh prison in the UK, which is a very bad prison, and it's a prison for some of the worst criminals in the UK. It's a maximum security prison, you could say. So the situation, unfortunately, is not looking good, but there still is some hope, and we can get into that maybe a little bit later.
Sure. Yeah, it's a very dire situation. I think I've been following and documenting the Julian Assange case now for, my gosh, it seems like an eternity, and it's such a tragedy, and it reflects upon so much because not only as the individual Julian Assange himself for the work that he did as a journalist, but also the magnitude, Taylor, of how it impacts journalism in general, in part because today where sharing the truth or sharing an alternative view is deemed to get you blocked or get you banned or get you removed. The consequences of him being extradited to the United States, there's going to be a lot of different ramifications regarding that. And as a journalist to you, I'm sure that leaves some thoughts and concerns to you yourself, as well as many others.
This case is very serious for a multitude of reasons, as you had outlined, namely because of the broader press freedom issues, and also too because Julian Assange's life is at stake. If he is extradited to the United States, many are saying that this is equivalent to a death sentence. But beyond just Julian Assange himself, there are, as you say, broader press implications. I mean, this is a really unprecedented case because here we have a journalist and publisher who is being charged under the U.S. Espionage Act of 1917, which many argue that this act is actually quite outdated, quite antiquated, but it was intentionally or left up initially to prosecutors not to use the Espionage Act against law-abiding citizens or individuals for political reasons. But that's exactly what we're seeing happening here with the case of Assange. And also it's worth noting that Julian Assange is not even an American citizen. He's Australian. So the First Amendment does not apply to him, but the U.S. Espionage Act of 1917 does. So it's a very strange situation, and many legal scholars, I believe, do not agree with the court's interpretation that the U.S. Espionage Act applies to Assange, being the fact that he's a foreign national and not a U.S. citizen. But this case really seeks to criminalize standard and normal journalistic activity. It seeks to criminalize things like source protection and other news gathering techniques that journalists have engaged in for decades and decades. So this case is serious, and people are noticing that. And you have every human rights and press freedom organization in the world right now who is calling for Assange's immediate release and for the U.S. to drop this case. So people are seeing that this is a very serious case, and that our world will look very differently if he were to be extradited, because our access to information will be very much altered and changed.
Yeah, no, very well said. In terms of the very dangerous precedent that it establishes, and you point out some, numerous great things in regards to, in particular, I don't think that there's been any true crime, other than just the Espionage Act, in which they still have failed to really show that he was complicit in that. Most of the information that he gathered was either provided directly to him via WikiLeaks, and he was just basically just sharing that information. And a lot of the information, I believe, unless someone wants to tell me something different, I don't think it's ever been either redacted or corrected based upon not only the tragedy with the Reuters journalists that were killed in Iraq, but also exposing numerous types of activities in which certain U.S. alphabet agencies get involved with. And what I'm speaking generally to is the Vault 7 or Vault 9 release of that information, and basically kind of showing how their mechanisms of cyber warfare, cyber crimes take place, where they literally can implant a virus and make it look like it comes from some other type of government and put that in place where it looks like that takes shape. And I guarantee you, for the most part, Taylor, that I think that's why they really are going after Julian Assange. I can't help but think what the UK government potentially could be getting out of this. I always keep going back to that. Like, what is it that the United States was able to convince the UK courts that, hey, we want this extradition to take place? We know that there were certain things that should have happened that didn't. But I can't think of what they would be gaining from this, of expelling Julian and allowing him to be extradited to the United States.
Well, that's a good point. What is there to gain from this? I think it's just a continued cooperation between the U.S. and the UK. There's a close relationship there. I've seen some argue that it would be actually rather unusual for the UK to prevent this extradition, but there have been cases where people have successfully fought extradition from the UK to the United States. And one of those cases is Lori Love's case. I interviewed him I think it's going on 2 years now. at the conclusion of the evidentiary hearings. And he told me that it's oftentimes the process that can be the punishment with these extradition proceedings. It's a grueling process. It takes a long time, as we've seen. We've been dealing with this for the past 2 years now. So the case is dire. It's a very serious situation. And now it is left up to Priti Patel to either approve or reject this extradition request. And many are of the belief that she's going to approve this extradition request. But there are campaigns to stop this. And one of them has been put forward by RSF, Reporters Without Borders, where they're having anyone who's interested, the people listening right now, you can go ahead and sign this petition. And it will just sort of send a message to Priti Patel that you do not approve of extraditing Julian Assange to the United States. And it's basically a letter to her, an open letter. Anybody in the public can sign this open letter. And it's encouraging her to uphold the free press and to also save Julian Assange's life and to not approve this extradition. Now, another point is that once she makes her decision, Assange still can appeal her decision. I believe he can only do it one time, though. But there still is a very small window of opportunity to stop this extradition. And everyone listening right now can help play a role in that. If they feel moved by this case and they want to help, that is one way they can help, is to sign this petition. And it's on Reporters Without Borders website.
Excellent. Great information. And there's been a few other, very outspoken. I also believe that the Human Rights Watch organization has also contested and protested against the activities in regards to Assange, literally basically torture of what's, happening, to him. It's a form of torture. We know that, and it'll probably only increase once he does get to the United States. But also Jeremy Corbyn, also, I believe I'm stating his name correctly. He's been very lately outspoken and just stating, listen, this is an atrocity. This is a terrible thing that's happening to Julian. Taylor, does it surprise you at all that the mainstream legacy media, like the journalists we see on TV, that they have not followed this case more closely or been more outspoken in advocating for his release? Does that surprise you at all? What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, the mainstream Western media, they're not even journalists. They're doing something else, I think. It's not journalism. Fortunately, though, I can say that I think all of the major newspapers and media organizations in the United States do have some content on their websites or have come out with statements in favor of Assange. We've seen some people within the mainstream media criticize the decision to charge Julian Assange under the U.S. Espionage Act. But of course, we would welcome more vocal and outspoken support for Assange from people within the mainstream media. But we're not seeing that too much. But again, I think one of the best ways to help this situation is to continue highlighting the support that is there, because there is a lot. If you go to don'textraditeassange.com, there are so many politicians from around the world, and interestingly, from a broad scope of political parties as well, from the left and the right and everything in between. You'll see that there are MPs, representatives, and other politicians who support this man. And as I mentioned earlier, every press and human rights organization has been really raising awareness about this case. So the support is absolutely there, but the media is just a branch of the establishment. I mean, that's exactly what they are, which is why we need independent media that is free from this, corporate influence. And it's hard to do that because these mainstream media outlets, it's probably difficult for people to even get these journalists to get certain stories through the editors, because there is sort of, you have to look at their funding model, and they are being funded by mega corporations, the pharmaceutical industry. And that also, I think, played a role in the entire, which is still ongoing, by the way, the entire COVID authoritarian crisis that we saw happen the past 2 years. That's kind of gone under the radar. Again, that's a whole other issue. But the media, they're hopeless, the mainstream media. We need independent voices.
Yeah, and I don't want to digress too far, but, just, a friendly reminder, I'm not exactly sure what the policies were during the Obama administration, But it appears through that time period, there's a little bit of reprieve through that. Now, obviously, there could have been different type of covert activities, which we will probably never know. But this really took a turn once Trump got in during his administration, where they really pushed forth the effort. And I guarantee you, Mike Pompeo probably had quite a bit to say, where, we had the DOJ really go after Julian Assange. And now basically we're witnessing the same policies that were instituted through the Trump administration, that the Biden administration is kind of taking the same process through it, which is just, it shouldn't surprise us. Huh?
Yeah, that's the weird part about it, because the Biden administration right now, actually, by continuing to prosecute this case, is aligning itself with the Trump administration, because it was the Obama administration that chose not to prosecute Assange because of what they called the New York Times problem. They felt that it was just a step too far for press freedoms, and that they would also have to prosecute the New York Times, and they just didn't want to go down that route. And of course, Joe Biden was the vice president under Obama. So it is weird that the Biden administration is just continuing this prosecution and aligning itself with the Trump case. I really wish that there could be someone within the mainstream media who can question, someone within the administration about this, about why they are aligning with the Trump administration. I could just see Jen Psaki's head spinning if somebody would just address this point. I wish somebody would do that. I mean, that would be really powerful.
I think it would be as well. Yeah. I mean, it's definitely, worth pointing out. And the reason why, again, I don't want to digress too far, but I feel that the efforts to get Julian freed up, they should be a lot more advanced. Now, there's been a lot of advocates, a lot of people doing it, but millions of people who were paying attention to this kind of fell asleep at the wheel when there was, all kinds of conspiracy theories that Julian had already been extradited and taken away from, from when he was held up in the embassy, and he's working with Trump, and they're going to be out to take on the deep state. There was a lot of people who believed these things, millions of people who believed these things. And if those people could have been lined up to say, no, we have to keep pushing them. When we're talking 2 or 3 years ago, and if we could have had more people participate in the conversation to share it, simply sharing interviews or what you said, signing petition, again, hindsight is always 2020, looking the back. It don't have to do that, but we're basically in the 11th hour now of an attempt to really get the courts to change their mind. I agree with you. It's not looking very good. But at the same time, for Julian, for his wife, Stella, and their family, we have to continue pushing forward. And I also know this weekend, I'm going to bring this into screen real quick, but I also know this weekend, I think it started today, but tomorrow is going to be a very significant rally and concert. It's going to be live streamed tomorrow, so you can catch that. And I believe it's going to be over on the Don't Extradite Assange campaign YouTube channel that they'll be live streaming this. And there's going to be numerous guests. So if you could do us a favor, not only go and sign the petition that Taylor mentioned, but also share this live stream in your social, media, whatever platforms you participate in, to help drive awareness. Because again, we are in the 11th hour of this, and it's the ramification of it are far reaching as it relates to media and freedom of press. Taylor.
Oh, absolutely. Everybody listening right now really needs to step up. I believe they will. Sign that petition, talk about this case, share interviews, share videos, attend the different events, continue to follow it. And also you can call and email Preeti Patel. I assume many of the viewers are Americans, so calling is not the easiest thing unless you want a crazy high phone bill, but to call the UK. So I know that's not always an option, but you can send emails. It may feel like it's not going to make a difference, but if every single person were to do this literally every single day and her inbox was filled, I mean, who knows what could happen? And it's worth a try. The worst that can happen is that she just doesn't see it, or it's not acknowledged or anything like that. But I think it's worth it. It takes 2 seconds of your time, and it can maybe really make a difference in this case. Again, I know, we're preaching to politicians, and one in particular who is not the best advocate of press freedom and human rights, sadly, but I think it's still worth fighting for.
Yeah, absolutely. I completely agree. And thank you for starting our conversation in regards, because it's very timely in regards to Julian.
Mhm.
Taylor, what else is on your radar? I mean, you cover a lot of extensive topics. I follow your work on Twitter. I know you've been very involved in trying to get the information out in regards to, you know, not only Ukraine, but also COVID. You did a lot of interviews with various different doctors as well. So I really applaud your efforts there. So what else is on your radar, Taylor?
Yes, so COVID is actually one of those things too. I think that a lot of people I've seen, even friends of mine, say that the past 2 years were terrible, but it's over now. We've had many court cases where we've won on these mandates and where they're sort of backtracking on the vaccines. Well, they are doing that right now, but I just think it's important to highlight that this is not going away. All the focus right now is on Ukraine, and it's distracting so many people. And I'm going to just discuss a few upcoming dates here. So the IHR is the International Health Regulation. The United States joined the IHR around 2005. And the US recently just submitted amendments to the IHR. And these amendments, I have not seen them. I don't know if they're publicly available. I would honestly hope that they are publicly available. They should be. But they are going to, further these restrictions. And this is going to be voted on between May 22nd and May 28th at the World Health Assembly's annual meeting in Geneva. And this is sort of going to bind us to further restrictions and lockdowns in the future. So while all the attention is on Ukraine, and I understand why that is, there are things happening that are taking place under the radar that are really scary when it comes to our rights. And people have been so deceived the past 2 years when it comes to COVID-19. And I just think that what had happened was horrible, especially given the fact that you had the media, governments, politicians, the public health industry, forcing people and encouraging them to make a very personal, irreversible health decision. And I'm talking about getting a COVID vaccine. And that was completely inappropriate. Journalists should have in no way been encouraging people to receive this vaccine. I also would say I wouldn't encourage anybody not to get it. That's not my job. I would never tell anybody don't do this, but I will provide you with the information that has been intentionally withheld from you by your government. So that's why I interview many doctors on this vaccine, on COVID-19. Some of these interviews are about a year old, but I still think, if you're interested in learning more about that, if you haven't seen those interviews, please check them out. They're very informative. And the doctors I spoke with put so much at risk just to talk to me and have a different perspective. I mean, they are potentially, at risk of losing their license. They're pretty much, what is the word? Blackballed from their own
Blacklisted.
scientific community.
Right. They lose their license. Absolutely.
Right. So go check out those interviews if you haven't seen them. But the point is that, all the focus is on Ukraine. All of these other things are taking place in the world. And it seems like COVID is something of the past. And I wish it was. But we have these dates coming up where they are voting on these amendments to the IHR. And I just think that it's really scary. And also, too, the World Health Organization is advancing a global pandemic treaty that will supersede the constitutions of governments for the member states that join into this treaty. So this is all advancing quite quickly. And I want to bring that to the people, make them aware of this, to not let their guard down.
Correct. Yeah, no, we can't. And I know people were celebrating in regards to the upper court's decision in regards to airlines and the mask mandates.
I was happy.
Yeah, and I had to chuckle at that a little bit, but you said a couple of things were very important. Is number one is that it really falls back to an individual decision based upon one's own individual health. We're not saying to or not to. That's a personal decision for each individual to make. However, government and government organizations should not be forcing these unlawful mandates on people in general. The World Health Organization is looking at what they deem some of the missed best practices, I guess, that you can state in regards to the handling of it. And that's why they're asking for more of a uniform type approach where there's a consensus upon nations to execute and to basically follow their procedures, what they deem as protocol versus constitutional rights of each country. So I think it's very important not to lose sight of that. And I've noticed here lately a couple of things that were very interesting to me. Is number one is that it seems like they're putting Obama back out in the public quite a bit more. I think it's very strategic why they're doing it, because they don't have that person that is, because let's face it, Obama's a very eloquent speaker. Like he's very good at connecting with people in general, and the way he delivers his message. I think it resonates a lot with people, just his ability to do that, especially when you have Joe Biden out there. I guess at that point, anyone's better.
Yeah,
it's better at that point. But I noticed that Obama, and I can't remember where the forum was, and you can catch this on Twitter, it's out there, where he was stating specifically that the work's not done. He said basically, like, listen, that there's still 1 in 5 people out there in the United States that's putting their family members at risk, they're putting their neighborhoods at risk, and we need to up the ante in terms of the vaccination rate. So so they're not differentiating between their approach. The other thing I noticed in my Twitter feeds here lately, I've been getting a lot more of like everything from athletes to celebrities in these. I'm not sure if it's the World Health Organization or whoever's paying for these ads to hit my Twitter feeds that are promoting it. So there's no way that it's going anywhere anytime soon. And I said this, Taylor, at the start of this, back in, was it March, April of 2020 or 2021? It seems like we've been dealing with it forever. I said that basically they've pivoted from the war on terror, that the war on terror has pivoted. They've changed it, and it's now the war on viruses. And they're going to prolong this. And the reason why they do that is because they tend to elevate the fear factor. And when you can weaponize fear, and you can institute that in people, you can use that for leverage. You can convince people in society to do a lot of things that you normally don't do. And terrorism was a perfect example of that. They're kind of doing the same thing with the fear factor and elevating in regards to COVID. And the second approach and why they're leveraging that is because, again, I think it falls back to something that on not only my work on the Gadfly, but also on Rogue News that we talk about extensively, is the fact that we are going through a paradigm shift to basically a new world economy. The old system is dying, and I firmly believe that they need some type of process, something new to usher in that economic transition that's happening, and they need to be able to give a reason for that when we switch to digital currencies, digital platforms, and multitude of different things. And then again, anything that they try to tell you is for your own good and for your safety and everything, is more than likely is just another control mechanism that they use, that they utilize. They did the same thing with the TSA, that, hey, we're going to do all these things with TSA. It's going to be temporary. It's for your safety. This is the reason to do it. And those types of overreach that they do in terms of government and the surveillance state, it doesn't go away. It just stays there, Taylor.
Exactly. It just stays. So the measures were, with COVID at least, I think they did allude to the fact that they would be temporary. It was like 2 weeks to flatten the curve. And I just knew, oh no, this is, I'm kind of like laughing now. It's not funny. It's actually really serious what they're doing to us. Like, our world's going to be fundamentally different if their plans go through. But I just knew there's no way they're going to do this for 2 weeks. And here it is 2 years later, we're still talking about it. They're still advancing their plans. And in fact, it is on May 12th, I think there's another meeting. It's like a really weird group of countries too. It's the US and I think a few countries in Latin America, I want to say, some in Europe. And the US, I think, is leading this meeting. And the goal is to increase vaccination rates. And this is on May 12th, their meeting. So they're kind of discussing, I think, ways they can best sell it to the public to get their COVID vaccine if they haven't already, or to get a booster shot. So the efforts are still there. And unfortunately, it's maybe, COVID won't be the next so-called pandemic. It'll be something else. But once we accept this digital ID on our phones, I mean, there's no going back after that point. It's scary. You must resist this. And in Europe, I spent quite a bit of time there recently. And some of the countries there, I mean, I couldn't even fly into them. I had to, you know, cancel flights. I think they've lifted those restrictions, at least for now. But I mean, I couldn't even like travel to certain places being a US citizen. And it's just a mess that we allowed this to happen. And it's also an infringement on freedom of movement. You could argue that as well.
Absolutely.
So, disaster.
Yeah, absolutely. Taylor, I'd like to close, and I really appreciate your time today. But how concerned are you about the situation in regards to Ukraine and the attempts to basically control every bit of the narrative? We witnessed RT being shut down here in the United States. We witnessed Sputnik News. You know, basically anyone that's countering any of the narrative that the mainstream media wants you to believe, it's literally being shut down, and it's very systematic. It's very concerning. So for you as an independent journalist, Taylor, what are your thoughts on the magnitude of censorship that's happening lately, and where do we go from here? What do we need to do to counter that?
Yeah, it is really concerning. I mean, RT being shut down in the United States was really a big deal, and it happened very quickly. All of the censorship is happening very, very quickly. That's something that really surprises me, is how fast they've been able to sort of pull this off. And I think that the mainstream media, Western coverage of this situation in Ukraine is just so, I don't even know how to describe it other than to just say they're literally lying to us about what's happening in Ukraine. They're completely lying, and they are uplifting this man Zelensky. And I think, and he's so corrupt, he was put in there by the US. He's a puppet. He's also an actor. What qualifications did he have to be president of Ukraine? He's playing the role as the president of Ukraine, but Ukraine is so unbelievably corrupt. They have a history of torturing, kidnapping, killing journalists, political dissidents, and any political opposition that they may have. So it's just a very corrupt place. And from what I've, heard, I haven't been following the crisis on a daily basis with a great amount of detail like I have some other issues like COVID and the Assange case. But from what I do understand, the West is portraying it as if Ukraine is losing, or Ukraine is winning this conflict, and that Russia is coming out the loser here. And that is just not at all the case. There's going to be also, I believe, an economic crisis within the West in the United States as a result of these ridiculous policies that they have implemented, the sanctions they placed on Russia. It's just all so outrageous. The coverage is just unbelievable because they're literally lying about the situation. I am worried about the censorship, of course. As an independent journalist, it's, once they started going after, Russian affiliated media, I had to wonder, well, what are they going to do to independent journalists? It's something we have to think about and be cautious of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the finance and economics is just important because we're witnessing the de-dollarization occur around the globe, and it's escalating quickly. Everything with what China and Russia is doing in the BRICS nations, and also one other aspect of it that makes absolutely no sense is the amount of U.S. taxpayer money that is subsidizing this war, and the humanitarian part of it is just absolutely gosh awful. That we continue to fund this. The United States continues to fund this. And I believe the last charts that were put out, I believe that's like 75 to 80% of the weapons and the funds are coming from the United States, to Ukraine. And to do that for the toll of for what? To watch not only just another crisis, a humanitarian crisis that's being created, but also just the innocent loss of life that we're doing. And I think at this point now, it's just a matter of they're doing it because they had to give the military industrial complex, like there's still things occurring in the Middle East, but there's no great expenditures that are taking place. But now, you know what? They have the next bailout taking place. Mm-hmm. Here's your millions of dollars for these weapons orders are taking place. So in 2008, they bailed out the banking, the finance sector through the COVID. Billions of dollars went to big pharma. And now we have the military industrial complex saying, when do we get paid? Where's our part? And and here's where we've arrived. So hopefully people, I think the narrative is changing quite a bit. I see a lot more people that are starting to question what's happening in Ukraine, which is a good sign. So I think the information is starting to break through a little bit at a time where people were saying, well, you know, we're in a world of hurt here in the United States. You know, everything economically to the amount of inflation that we're dealing with here in the United States. So how does this make sense to continue spending billions of dollars? And I know Biden announced yesterday that literally they've exhausted the first round of funding for Ukraine, and that he's going to be submitting next week probably another $1 billion or $2 billion to House and to the Senate to pass this. And what amazes me is that, like, you know, 25 years ago, Taylor, we used to have an anti-war party. Like, the Democrats used to be anti-war, and we don't have that anymore. Like in the United States, we no longer have an anti-war party, and nothing speaks more to government unity of the left and the right, but a war. They love coming together and advocating, because it's something that they can both sign up for. And yeah, just very interesting times that we're living, Taylor. I'm gonna leave you with closing thoughts, and then also if you want to plug, I did at the beginning, but just one more time, remind our listeners of where they can find your work, please, Taylor.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you for having me. Always an interesting and great discussion. I appreciate it. Just want to remind everybody again, there's about a 4-week window of time where we could really put pressure on Priti Patel and also others within the UK government to stop Julian Assange's extradition. And also you could put pressure on your own representatives in the United States and the White House as well to step up. But also make sure you sign that petition that Reporters Without Borders put forward. I will tweet it out actually after this interview. I'll tweet it out so people can access it. And you could follow me on Twitter at _Taylor Hudak. I'm pretty active there. I'm also on Instagram, not too active on Instagram though, but I'm at Journalist Taylor. And then also my Telegram channel, it's Taylor Hudak News. Check that out. I try to post as much as I can there. I'm able to also share a little bit more context on Telegram, and it's a platform that is intended not to censor, I guess. I've still heard some people of experiencing censorship on the platform, of course, but yeah, subscribe to my channel there. And you could also find my work at acTVism Munich's YouTube channel. And my work is published in English and in German on that platform. And then also the LastAmericanVagabond.com. Yes, there it is. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
Absolutely a pleasure. And you're welcome back anytime, Taylor. So thank you for that, and have a great weekend. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, everyone, there you have it. Taylor Hudak. You know, we'll put the links in the descriptions afterwards to get that petition signed. I want to thank you all for listening into this very important interview discussion with Taylor. And also, don't forget, please also support the work that I do. Everyone knows pretty much where to follow me on Twitter, but also do me a favor, show some love over to the work that I do with the Gadfly, which is at the gadfly.vhx.tv with London Paul, with Ken Shortgen Jr. I want to thank our numerous subscribers for the work that we do on the Gadfly, and also our listeners at Rogue News. I got to show you guys some love as well. Appreciate the passion and the support that you guys give for the work that I do. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in. Have a fantastic weekend. Stay strong, stay safe. God bless. I'm over and out.